Hey everyone, welcome back to Miniature Painting 101, a series of videos where I teach you all about miniature painting from start to finish and everything you guys want. I take your requests and I make videos for it. It's awesome. And this is part 52, Fire, how to paint fire on miniatures, specifically how to paint a fire model, not painting flames on miniatures. So we will be painting the flames on this particular evil looking miniature today with the large set of colors. We will be starting off with reds, 3 reds, and then adding yellows to make oranges, then using the yellows on their own, and then adding white to the yellows ultimately. So we'll be using Mephiston red, Evil Sun scarlet, Wild Rider red, which is like an orangey red, Hero yellow combined with Wild Rider red, Hero yellow on its own, Flash Kids yellow, and finally Flash Kids yellow with white. And obviously we'll be starting at the base of the flames and working our way outwards for the color, but to make this all possible, we will be using a drying retardant. We will be using wet blending today because the model is so large that you pretty much have to add a drying retardant to get a nice blend going. If it wasn't such a large model, you can get away without drying retardant, but because the model is so large and the amount of flames is so large, we'll be using a drying retardant. So we'll start off with Mephiston red, which is the darkest red for the Citadel range, added to our palette as always, because we want to use our palette. And add a little bit of thinner, and finally add our drying retardant, which will create a nice thin paint that won't dry up very soon, and we'll be using this throughout the tutorial. The same exact procedure throughout all my colors throughout this tutorial, but each paint I'll be mixing less and less paint, and I'll be drawing less and less paint into my brush because we'll be going further away from the edges, or sorry, further away from the center. So we'll start off by painting all of the flames with Mephiston red. Now, I have to give you some caution. When doing this much wet blending with this many colors, be careful on the bottom parts. This wheel, for example, paint will really pool up and you get this giant pool of paint if you don't watch how much paint you put onto your brush. So don't use too much paint when doing the parts, especially the bottom part here, when I'm painting right now, because as I said, paint will pool there and it'll be this giant pool of wet paint that'll take forever to dry since we're using drying retardants. I came back after this painting tutorial was done 3 hours later and the paint was still wet, so it takes very long to dry. And after it was dried, after the first application was put on, we then took Evil Sun Scarlet and repeated the process. We added some thinner, and I added some drying retardant, and then I just started the flames again. Once again, I start at the top. You'll notice I start at the top of each flame and work my way downwards. So, or you can start at the bottom, but I typically just start at the top, and I make sure that the Mephiston red is at the very bottom of the flame, and we are just going to keep going. I'm going to leave a little bit at the bottom for each part for Mephiston red, and just paint the rest of the flame Evil Sun's Scarlet. And now when doing this much wet blending, you have the option throughout the tutorial, and you're going to see me do this. You can take either a dry brush, like literally just a dry plain brush, to blend the colors afterwards if you want them to be a little bit more blended, or you can take the previous color on the palette and just take a little bit of that and use that to blend if you find your blends are a little bit too clunky. You have both options, and I'll be using both throughout this tutorial. So as you can see here, I'm painting the tops of the flames. I'm leaving Mephiston red in the crevices and the very bottoms of each flame. We're going to paint our way outwards because outwards it gets brighter and hotter. Next we use Wild Rider red. Repeat this process, thin it down, add some drying retardant, and start at the top, work our way down, but not go as far down as we did before. And it's up to you how much red you want to leave. Essentially, the composition of the flame is up to you, how much red, orange, and yellow you want. I like a pretty even distribution in my flames. I like to look a little cartoony, but certain people want more realistic, want more yellows, I find, than reds. So you just paint a little bit of red. And as you can see here, I'm just taking a dried brush, and I'm just using it to blend a little bit of the paints together and just create a nice, more subtle blend. And just remember, when flames, you don't actually have to have a perfect blend. In fact, sometimes, you're going to see in some flames, I'm going to leave a bit of a triangular edged pattern to the flames, and it's actually quite realistic. If you watch flames in real life, they don't have a perfect blend to them. In fact, they're quite living, and there's a great amalgamation of colors in them. So you feel free to do that in your flames, and it's up to you how much blending you want. And as I said, you can leave bits of edges, and it actually looks quite nice in these flames. So what next we're going to do is we're We're going to take some Eero Yellow and add it to the Wild Red or Red, a 1-to-1 mix, and now we're creating our oranges. There's no point buying oranges when you have yellows and reds. It's just an easy transition just to create your own oranges by adding yellow, and then you can also control exactly the brightness of the orange. And once again, start at the top, thin it down, work our way towards the bottom. Not as far down. We're just creating a nice gradient of colors, and as you said, it doesn't have to be a perfect blend. It's up to you how much blending you want. But if you find it just too clunky, take the previous color and you can wet blend it quite easily. Or you can just take a dry brush and that'll help blend the colors as well. And as you can see, the paint is already starting to pool a little bit at the bottom of this wheel because of the amount of wet paint is just building. And once again, I'm just blending the colors a little bit and then just going and adding some more color to the bottom parts of the flames. And I'm going to work my way up those ones as well. Once again, building them up. This is an interesting miniature. I don't really know the miniature, but it's a very cool flaming miniature. So I just wanted to use this for the Flames Miniature Painting 101. And once again, I'm just blending the colors a little bit more. And then I'm going to do a 1-to-2 mix. So I added a little bit more yellow into the mix to create an even lighter orange, closer to the yellow spectrum than to the reds. And I'm just repeating this process. And when you're adding the next amount of yellows, you can add a little bit more thinner to keep the same consistency, but you really don't have to add that much more drying retardant. It keeps drying retardant anyway. So, and once again, just adding to the flames. And as you can see, I'm going to try to keep it's almost an even amount of red, orange, and yellow, but it's up to you exactly how much composition you want. Many people I do find like to keep more of the yellow spectrum on their flames and less reds, but that's up to you. Whatever you want. And right now you can see these flames are really starting to build in colors and they're starting to look very flame-esque, I guess you could say. And just doing a little more blending. But you can see in some areas there's that triangular pattern which I mentioned, and it really does look very nice. And right now I'm just taking a bit of the previous color and just blending it a little bit better. This is another benefit of using, you can use a wet palette if you want as well, which is great for keeping those colors. But the amount of drying retardant I have in each one, it's pretty much okay in their palette. It's going to take a while to dry. And now we're just going to use pure Eero Yellow and repeat the process. And you can see each time I'm adding less and less paint to my palette, I'm adding less and less thinner to it, and I'm adding less to my brush. I'm drawing less paint into my brush because I'm only going a little bit more down each time. And that way I'm only focusing more on the top and working my way slightly more down. So it's less and less paint is required. So less paint is wasted by controlling exactly how much you have. I couldn't imagine drawing it from the pot in this case because I am needing to add things to thin it down and adding drying retardant. And these flames are really starting to come to life, especially the ones at the top. As you can see now, the yellow is starting to really blend. And as I said, the paints will dry eventually, and they'll dry a little bit darker than you think, so it'll really create a nice blend of colors. And then finally, flash gets yellow, the next lighter color of yellow, and just repeat this process. Start at the top, a little bit downwards. This is a very bright yellow. And some flames, depending on the miniature, some flames have a lot more texture to them. These are really kind of flattish flames. There's not a lot of texture to the flames. But the next step, this step and probably the next step are actually great as an overbrush, just picking up the edges of the, if you find your flames are really textured, I recommend just doing an overbrush with the flash gets yellow, and then when adding the white, do an overbrush to even higher points, because it really does bring out the texture in your flames. This is just a really not a very, it doesn't have a lot of texture to the flames, so it'll be okay. And then I added a 1-to-1 mix of flash gets yellow and white scar, and then just once again repeat this process for the very tips. And this is where I definitely do an overbrush if I had a little bit more flame texture, like if it was a pyre troll from Troll Bloods. And that's it. We are building up our flames, and as you can see, there's a great spacing of red, yellow, and oranges. It's about even on the flames. That's the way I like it. And in the end, I just painted quickly the wood. That way I can separate the flames from the wood. It's easier to pick up on what I did with the flames. And that's essentially it. We've just painted our flames, and it will take a long time to dry, and when it dries, it'll be a little bit more blended than it is now. And you can see it's still wet, and this is hours after I painted it. But it turned out really well, and that's how you essentially paint flames. Just decide where you want, how much of each color you want to break down for the flames, and work your way away from the center point towards the up points and brighter colors. And that's it. So thank you so much for watching this episode of Miniature Painting 101. I really hope you enjoyed it. And stay tuned for part 53, which is just around the corner. But if you can't wait for next week, check out The Warp. Click on the link below for a free 14-day trial to my premium YouTube channel, where not only get to see the next 6 months worth of Miniature Painting 101 episodes, you get to see over 40 start-to-finish painting tutorials, battle reports, airbrush series, and just some awesome wargaming content. So go ahead and check out The Warp. I think you'll love it. Until next time, this is Jay saying, happy painting, everyone.